الو يا بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Is the mic working?
Yes, thank you. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful,
الضيوف الكرام،
respected
مرحبا بكم
guests,
إلى
welcome
الجلسة الأولى
to the second session.
والتي سيكون لدينا 4 متحدثين.
We will have 4 speakers.
وستكون عن المشاريع القومية في الشرق
It
الأوسط.
will be handling projects of nationalism in the Middle East, their reality and results.
سيتحدث كل من
Each of the speakers will talk
لمدة 15
for
دقيقة
15
ثم
minutes,
بعد الانتهاء
and
سيكون
then
هناك
after that we will
أسئلة
open the floor
من الحضور.
for questions. The points raised in the I have a comment on it. The terms were not identified in a clear way, and then the word nationalism was used in before the modern age and after the modern age, so that the issue of nationalism is an idea or is a modern concept, even in Europe, because it developed from by tribes and conflicting sects into between the power of the Ottoman state and the European countries. It had shifted to certain categories ruled by the Ottoman Empire state in the eastern Europe, such as the نعم. Yes, now it's clear. Okay. The Turks took that concept in the 19th century and understood it as one of the nationalisms that were in the Ottoman Empire at that time. Even also in Iran, the same happened. What does that mean? That the Ottoman state or the Ottoman Empire, that was a state of identities but not nationalisms, most of which are cultural in nature and ethnic, had generated states or state nations. And the example before the Turks was to do that as well. The law at that time did the same in other countries with Arabs. The same. It happened with Arabs as well. So the issue of nationalism emerged. So the idea of nationalism is originated in, or was originated actually in Europe. But before the modern era or the modern age, it used to be in the form of identities but not nationalisms. Here in the conference, we have two keywords, nationalism and civilization. Yes, there was an Islamic civilization, but in the Islamic civilization, there were some countries, though they were not modern, such as Ottomans and the Safawi Ottoman state and the Safawi state before the 16th century. This didn't mean that we had one civilization and there were no conflicts. There were conflicts, but in general, as His Excellency said in the first session, the elite was cultural. It was unified in its perception, whether it was Arab, Ottoman, or Persian. Okay. The issue that took place, we talked about the Islamic civilization, but in the current era or in the present era, it is not enough alone. We need to add something to it so that it would be the spirit of the age. Not as before, it was before in the 12th century, the 13th century, or the 14th century. We need to add what the human being had achieved or has so far achieved in terms of progress. And maybe in the West, most of the advancements took place in the West. So, but we need to preserve our Islamic identity, our religion, and we need to take it from the West, the material civilization, the modern material civilization. So, each category started to take something alone. What we want, what we seek to achieve, are two things. First, we need to be attentive to the factor what is below nationalism and what is para-nationalism. What is below nationalism, or those are the groups which cannot stand as a separate nationalism, or to just separate the groups or those groups from the general consensus. But what is the para nationalism is not a pure nationalism. It's maybe culture and religion. This is above nationalism. But these things gather us. What I believe in that the is the strong terms of reference is the Islamic system, and this is a double-edged sword. Either it would be a unified cultural framework, exactly as was stated or predicted or stated by Jamaluddin al-Afghani, proximity of sex, or to be sectorial and destructive at the same. This is a destructive framework, as you see. Yes, we say Islam, but by the name of Islam, something is going which is quite destructive. When a war is put off, another war outrages. So, if we agree to call the modern nationalisms which have not developed in the fashion that it should have developed, if we put the civilization between two parentheses, all those nationalisms suffer from the disease of the awareness about the geostrategic factor that exercise pressure on them at the same time as it exercises pressure on other regions in the world. And sometimes I'll make a get into alliance with sectorial factors in order to penetrate into the body of the nation and to fragment that into pieces. So we are not alone today. Today is different from the Middle Ages. Today there is a conflict between powers, between wills, between. But the issue of the power and force in the past we were dominating. Today we are not. We must be careful about this because these international forces are getting into alliance is wanted, and what is going on now in the region, it was said to us that there is international law and you need to join this international law and adapt this international law, and we adopted the international. Now they are rejecting the international law which they came with it or which was manufactured or fabricated by them. As long as the international law, and they wanted us to join it, and now they are not doing or not acting in accordance with that international law. Any case, the problem is that we need to take from the West the culture, the scientific culture. We need that. But we also need to be on a certain distance in terms of politics and strategies. And this is a dilemma that is not easy to solve in order to put all these nationalisms in one compromise or in a one pot and to maintain the Islamic and the modern Islamic civilization that in compliance with the spirit of the age. Thank you, Dr. Mahmoud. If you have any question or any comment, you can write it down till we finish the session and on a later stage. Now we introduce Dr. Ramadan, professor of the international relations in the University of Eskişehir, Turkey.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for joining us today.
أشكركم على أن
Of my speech, I want to thank the Al Jazeera Center for Studies for their kind invitation me to attend this panel, and it's my great pleasure to attend this conference and this panel. Today I want to draw in Turkish foreign policy, especially in 2000s before an Arab Spring, and my paper focuses on the sequence subchapters. In Turkey, when the Justice and Development Party, during the ruling party, came into power in 2002, Turkish foreign policy dramatically began to change. Firstly, my paper goes beyond in the context of dynamic change in foreign policy since 2000, and I will try to summarize Turkish foreign policy before Arab Spring. Then I will discuss the effect of the Arab Spring and its effects both on Turkey and the region. After, I will examine the Arab Spring breakings process, transition process, and especially outputs. Next, I will try to draw attention to the challenge of the Arab Spring, failure, authority vacuum, especially instability and insecurity. I also try to analyze alignment between Turkey and Qatar. In this sense, I will discuss the Turkey's open door policy towards Syrian refugees. It's also been asylum seekers. In this Syrian case, I will analyze the cooperation among Russia, Turkey, and Iran. Finally, I will examine Turkey's general Levant policy and Gulf crisis. In the beginning of 2000, when the Justice and Development Party came in power in Turkey, Turkish foreign policy began to change, and Turkey has been experienced both domestic and foreign policy transformation. So in this sense, the approach, the new Turkish foreign policy approach is based on dimensional foreign policy and also rhythmic diplomacy. What does it mean? It means Turkey wants to be more active in international politics and involved in the regional issues. Before this era, I mean, since the establishment of Turkish Republic, Turkey's adopted a wait-and-see foreign policy, it can be labeled. What does it mean? Turkey does not want to involve, especially in regional issues and conflicts, and Turkey tried to gain and stable in borders and with its neighbors. But in 2000s, this dramatic change in Turkish foreign policy directly affected Turkish regional, local, and international politics. I mean, the rhythmic diplomacy means that Turkey uses a new diplomatic tools. For example, Turkey uses Turkish Airlines, Turkish Cooperation and Coordination Agency, and Yunus Emre Institute as a soft power tool. So in the new era, Turkey's new foreign policy tools is not only based on traditional foreign policy tools. In the second foreign policy element of Turkey is balancing security and freedom. It's highly important, I think, because in the post 9/11 era, many Western and United States or European countries began to restrict border crossing and visa procedures. On the contrary, Turkey began to make an area for freedom and not risking its security. This is balancing freedom and security is also another element of Turkish foreign policy. In 2000, Turkey also took important steps to overcome security challenge with its neighbors countries. For example, Iraq, Syria, Greece, even Armenia. Turkey's new foreign policy aims to establish strategic economic relations with its neighbors and with ensuring bilateral consensus solve the security problems. The democracy effect of Another aspect of Turkish foreign policy, obviously, is the terrorist organizations' activities and attacks. Mainly PKK terrorist organization is the most security threat for Turkey. So, in order to overcome this security and terrorist challenge, Turkey is also seeking to establish bilateral and multilateral relations with its neighbors. For example, Turkey's in the beginnings of 2000s established high-level economic cooperation institutions with its neighbors, Syria, Iraq, and Iran. So these new economic relationship between these countries make easier to behave or act collaboratively towards regional conflicts and terrorist organizations or terrorist attacks. And also the new geopolitical and security environment provided both Turkey and its neighbors to act in a common understanding in solution regional problems. In this area, Turkey also assumed important responsibilities hosting just as Iraq's neighbors summit, Caucasus Stability and Cooperation Platform, in order to mediate regional conflicts and prevent instability. Another aspect of Turkish foreign policy is to shift policy directions to new regions. For example, in traditional Turkish foreign policy is based on the regions such as Balkans and near countries. But in the new era, Turkey's foreign policy is directed to new regions, for example, Sub-Saharan Africa, Asia-Pacific region, and Latin America. While Turkey engaged mainly political and economic relations with Northern Africa, in 2000 it began to set up new political through Sub-Saharan region. This policy also includes free trade agreements with the neighbors. What did happen with Arab Spring? End of the 2010, Arab Spring spread to the region, especially North Africa and Middle East. Turkey also faced new security threats, especially in the post-Arab Spring era, because of the insecurity and instability in the region. So the main aim of the Turkey during the Arab Spring is supporting the moderate opposing groups against old regimes. Because existing regimes began to act and use violence against their people, Turkey preferred to support the pro-democracy and opposing groups. But failure in the transition process, except Tunisia, the instability in the post-Arab Spring era had serious impact on Turkish foreign policy and security policies, especially Turkey's border provinces with Syria were in terrorist attack and terrorist organizations attacks. Anyway, Turkey supported moderate opposing groups against authoritarian regimes in Libya, Egypt, Tunisia, Syria. Turkey had strong economic ties with Libya, but in the post-Gaddafi era, failure in transition period, economic relations between Turkey and Libya are deteriorated, and Turkey's workmen withdraw from Libya. In addition to support opposing groups, Turkey provided humanitarian assistance without any engagements. It's highly important. Turkey also played mediating role in regional conflicts, but as I mentioned before, insecurity and instability after the Arab Spring in the region forced Turkey to reformulate in its foreign policy. Security first foreign policy of Turkey is a necessity because of the security threats. Between cooperation, Qatar and Turkey is also highly important before and during Arab Spring. I think the Qatar and Turkey shares the common concerns and tries to act more comprehensive foreign policy in regional policies, in regional conflicts. For example, Turkey established a military base in Qatar. This is the second military base of Turkey abroad. The first one is, as you know, in Somalia. This is also highly important, and I think it is the indicator of high-level cooperation between Qatar and Turkey. So this military base and the cooperation of Qatar and Turkey this cooperation aims to overthrow regional issues and regional conflicts. In terms of challenge of the Arab Spring, two countries, Qatar and Turkey, share same concerns and tries to act together.
دكتور
So,
محمد ما نجي time.
okay. What are the challenges in the post-Arab Spring era? These are the instability and insecurity facing terror threats and terrorist organization activities, especially in northern side of the Syria, PKK, V5G, YPD, and Daesh. The absence of collective security mechanism, refugee crisis also highly important, offensive foreign policy of global and regional actors. Syrian civil war, Turkey adopted an open door policy. Turkey assumed the most important responsibility in these Syrian cases. So I just want to draw attention that Turkey's foreign policy is not sectarian. It's pro-democratic, it is not non-identity based, and it is humanitarian. Could you please pay your attention on the screen, please? As of the 2019, Turkey is hosting refugees in Syrian refugees. It's about official numbers to 3 and 6 billion. As you know, it's more than many countries' population. So if you see this map, most of the border provinces in Turkey, especially in the south border, host the Syrian refugees. So I just want to mention only 1 minute, Chair, excuse me. What about regional access and cooperation between Russia, Turkey, and Iran? The rapprochement of with Iran and Russia is necessitated from failed military coup attempt by FETÖ terrorist organization in 2016 on July 15th. And also the European Union's based attitude against Turkey and the United States' aggressive and offensive policy. So demilitarization agreement in Idlib between these countries is highly important output. So as I conclude, Turkey modified its traditional foreign policy and adopted an active foreign policy. Turkey's foreign policy towards Middle East is based on humanitarian, and alliance between Qatar and Turkey was institutionalized both countries, both military and politically. Thank you very much for your patience.
شكرا دكتور رمضان. الآن المتحدث الثالث الدكتور عبد الرضا فرجيرات المدير العام للمجلس
speaker
الاستراتيجي.
is the director of the Strategic Council and is of political studies.
First of all, I should thank our brother, the director of Ibn Khaldun Center of the Qatar University, and also the director of Al Jazeera Center that invited me to participate in this conference. In my lecture, I would like to speak about the relationship between regional nationalism and Islamic civilization and how they can reconcile to create consolidation. Dear friends, as you are aware, the Middle East has been facing numerous crises in the past several decades. Perhaps it can be hypothesized that after the Second World War and the formation of the Jewish government and the forced expulsion of Palestinians, our region became estranged to peace and stability. This resulted in increasing grievances and separation among countries in the Middle East. If we really wanted to identify the roots of such a division, we need to admit that there is direct and indirect association between the present problems of Middle East and the formation of the Zionist regime. Because of the pressure of the time, I cannot go to the details. The presence of Israeli government, huge oil reserves, and a strategic rivalry between the East and the West encourage global powers return to this part of the world and interfere in its internal affairs in forms other than those used in colonial era. In addition, governments in the Middle East and North Africa are lacking a signal geopolitical vision. Instead, they are holding all sorts of ideas which are being influenced by history, political ideology, and geographical location. Notwithstanding, most governments share some of the interpretations, yet they are holding combinational approach towards the world developments. These governments, especially in the past, abhorred the interference of foreign powers in the political and economic life of the region. Also, in the new period, this has remarkably diminished. Some countries of the regional are interested in the interference of foreign powers, leading to an increase in the gap between nationalities and religious fanaticism, ultimately resulting in radicalism and terrorism and the emergence of new type of progressing nationalism, the manifestation of which are well portrayed in the media and virtual space. This would ultimately result in more division among the countries of the region and pave the ground for outsider powers to exploit the situation. Ladies and gentlemen, even though nationalism is probably one of the most powerful political forces of the New World, it is basically a European cause which was spread to other parts of the global extensively in the 19th and 28th centuries. From the mid-17th century, nationalism became the foundation of emerging political systems in Europe when people with similar characteristics saw themselves in connection with a specific area of land. Nationalistic thought, for some reasons, entered the Middle East in the second half of the 19th century. Such thoughts were being discussed among a few intellectuals in the Middle East before the 19th. Yet, with the advent of the 20th century, it came to be considered as a major political force which manifested its peak in the Turkish and Iranian as well as Kurdish and Jewish nationalism. The gradual collapse of the Ottoman Empire paved the ground for the emergence of the Turk nationalism. The Ottoman Empire was Islamic and its emperor was therefore considered as a Muslim Khalifa or Sultan. Arab nationalism is rather different from other nationalism in the Middle East, and the reason is the extensive territories settled by the Arabs. As a result, it encompasses all types of concepts and its domain varies from the degree of an all-Arab state to local nationalism such as Egyptian nationalism. Since a minority of Arabs are still eyeing and hoping for the formation of a united Arab state, the Arab nationalism remains incomplete while there exists a Turkish government and an Iranian government. It is hard to refer to a precise date for the formation of Arab nationalism. However, years immediately after the young Turkish movement, that is 1908, appeared to be definite because in that year, the idea of Arab independence was consolidated in response to the Turk nationalism. Iranian nationalism had its own reasons as well. The relative geographical isolation of Iran and being surrounded with high mountains and seas contributed to the emergence of survival of distinctive national identity and culture. Iranians also have a share in Islam and centuries of proud history and civilization. Even though there is diversity of language in Iran and minority spoke Turkish, Arabic, and Kurdish, the Persian language was dominant and the majority of educated Iranians from any tribe spoke Persian. The Kurdish nationalism was strongly formed after the war and the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, which gave rise to the presence of Kurds in some countries of the region. As it was mentioned earlier, nationalisms in the Middle East led to internal changes as well as external tensions. Still, nationalism is blamed one reason for the interstate differences in the region. Of course, nationalism cannot be cleared from the social and political arena of the Middle East, as in many other parts of the world. However, the Middle East has been witness to other developments too. People following Turkish, Arab, Persian, and Kurdish nationals cooperated to establish an Islamic civilization, a civilization the West admits exported many of the modern sciences to the West and particularly Europe. Therefore, the Middle East has had experiences too, resulting in a turbulent situation. In today's world, without doubt, the most integrated states are those who are established based on nations and those whose people are well informed of similarities and distinctions internally and with their neighbors and countries of the region and try to form partnerships with the framework of continued talks and establishment of regional cooperation organization similar to other parts of the world from Europe to East Asia and Southern America. The Middle East countries can begin internal talks with attained proximity and unity in view of the existence of such nationalism within the framework of Islamic culture and civilization, which has already demonstrated its prosperity as the result of cooperation in the past. Today, foreign interference in the region, either at the foreign level or at the level of interstate tension, could further intensify problems and national and regional integrity. Interference demonstrates itself in various forms from verbal incitement to overt and covert media, political, intelligence, and security assistance and military consideration. Such interference is now on the rise in Middle East and has led to increasing tension and conflict. Ladies and gentlemen, considering the above points and particularly the necessity of beginning talks with the framework of Islamic culture and civilization, in conclusion, I would like to present the following proposal for a more rapid movement towards consolidation and joint integration. Before any action, holding such meetings seems necessary for reaching a common ground and perspective for talks among the countries of the region with an emphasis on Islamic civilization. Perhaps the state of Qatar could become a pioneer. The outcome of such meetings should provide necessary tools to reach consolidation and joint integration. Such tools include the following as introduction. One, non-interference of the country of the region in the domestic affairs of each other, and signing non-aggression pact among regional powers. Two, to respect the rights and ideas of smaller countries. Three, to respect the religious beliefs of Islamic and non-Islamic schools of thought. Four, to respect and consider all inter-regional actions on equal footing. Five, to resist and collectively oppose any foreign aggression and support assisting each other. Six, to prevent outsiders from influencing and creating gaps and distances in the region. And finally, seven, to stop media propaganda against other nations of the region. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. الآن معنا الدكتور
Salahuddin University, Arbil. He is researcher of Kurdistan Research and Development Center, Kurdistan. Thank you, Doctor, and I thank my colleagues at Al Jazeera Center for Studies for the invitation, and I thank Qatar University and Ibn Khaldun Center and Ibn Khaldun University for inviting me to attend this conference. This conference, I take this opportunity to ask this, to thank the state of Qatar, as Qatar is among the Arab countries that is now open on the Kurdish issue. Not now, since many years. Al Jazeera Center for Studies has launched this issue, the Kurdish issue or question, and the Arab Studies for Studies, Arab Studies Center also has tackled this issue. Now, our colleagues at Qatar University and they speak about the possibility of creating a civilizational integration in the Middle East, including the Kurds. No, Turks, Arabs, Persians, and also Turks should be included in this social. Of course, we have Iran, and we have the Arab countries, Syria, Iraq. But when we speak about the nationals communities, this is something different. If the question is about the civilizational framework and the freedom fighters of Turks, they have played an important role in civilization roles. Abdullah Öcalan has manifesto. They call it democratic civilization, and he presented this project as a project for solve the Kurdish question in the Middle East based on creating democratic nation. This democratic nation is the Middle Eastern nation, not Persian or Turkish. This model has been implemented in the north of Turkey. We have in the north of Syria. It is implementation of Abdullah Öcalan's ideas, and they call the democratic troops. These troops have been called because because we have democratic nation now is shaped in the north of Syria. This area is not for Arabs and Turks. It is for all, and Turks should be there. Abdullah Öcalan is a terrorist from their viewpoint of the Turkish state, and the freedom movement in Turkey, they call it a terrorist. At the same time, in Kurdistan of Iraq, there are history is quite different history and absent in many intellectual elites. For example, when we speak about the Kurdistan, I speak as a researcher. If you go to the background of the Kurds and the cultural background of Turkish, you will find a terminology. They call it the, they call it the power. Even in the poetry, in songs, in verbal culture, it doesn't started with the First World War, Doctor. It started with the end of the Kurdish Emirates in the 19th century. All Kurdistan area were independent. It was a little bit under Turkish Qajari or Safawi occupation, but the Kurdish Turkish Emirates were committed by the independence of the Kurdish Emirates. But in the mid 19th century, this independence was aborted, and we start talking about the occupation. So far, consequently, when we see all the post Kirkuk, it was called in the Turkish Kurdish as reoccupation of Kirkuk. For example, this is just an example. It started with who? It started with the Safawis and Qajaris, and also with the Ottomans. But in the Kurdish literature, there is no sign to the Arab occupation at all. The negative attitude has not been started from Kurdistan, from the Arabs after the 60s, after the we call it July Revolution. The fighting started with the Iraqi government. There was a kind of media campaign against Kurds as a Zionist movement that wants or start against the national ambitions of Arabs, if there is Arab nationalism. But the negative attitude from the Ottomans and from the Persians was historical one. For example, the Simple Shakak, who fought the Iranian state, issued a newspaper titled "The Shams of with Sun of Kurds and the Night of Non-Arabs." Rosh Kurd, Shaf Ajam, the son of Kurds and the night of Persians. There is nothing relates to or a negative against the Arabs or Arab nationalism. Why? Because the occupation of Safawi and the Qajari and the Turkish, for example, for Kurdistan, on Kurdistan, inherited by the British and the French. The first revolution of Kurdistan were against the British colonization. Mahmoud al-Hafid was not against the Arabs. The Arabs inherited these areas after independence from the British colonization and the French colonization era. That's why I'm saying anything relates to this issue so far, what is in literature and Arab Kurds project, the Arab nationalism project and the state is the final result of Kurds. But there is difference or variation in how to reach the state. That's why we can see the liberation movement from socialism. When socialism was a model, they took from communism some ideas from communism. At that time, they were trying to give for self-independence after Lenin, for example. And after that, even entering into the Muslim Brotherhood and Salafis and the Salafi movement, which was within the work of Kurdistan. They took from these ideas to give justification for independence in the future. This is a part of what is in the hands of Kurds. Consequently, I can say Kurd state is the final goal for all Arab Kurds parties and for any person. International arena and regional circumstances may not admit. And even on the why how Kurds identify Arabs or identify the Arabs. The terminology or identification of Kurds among Arabs is minority in Iraq, minority in Syria, and they have to take their rights within the minority rights. Kurds in Turkey are Turks of mountains, and they have to integrate in the Iranian people. So there is no identification. This is the last point which I want to refer to. All these states, the Arab states, Turkey, Iran, still consider the Kurdish question uh, on the priority of threats, national security threat, on the top of the national security threat of these countries. Iran consider the Kurdish is a real threat to its existence. The Arab states also. Is it now my question? Uh, just a bit. Is it possible that we can change this view for, from being Kurds to be a threat, major threat, to the national security of the Arabs and the national Turkish and national security of Iran to be uh, as part of integration in the Middle East and sort of solution in the Middle East? Thank you very much. Thank you so much. As an academic, we speak about the integration. We are searching for. We are not searching for any conflict. We want stability. Now we give the question and answer. There are invited. Anyone? Yeah, please go ahead. Please identify your question directed to who? Or to the speaker. Mention the name of the speaker, please.
To discuss the civilization, the joint civilization framework, and we are not here to express on how to establish a new country or a new state or a new framework or to name names of scholars and to focus on that community and to remind the attendees here are talking as if do not want to interfere or with the presence of those scholars, but you to describe Abdullah Öcalan as as an intellectual and an idea, this idea that region, it means yeah, but this is quite shameful for what you have just said, because Abdullah Öcalan does not represent. I am a Czech, does not represent the Kurds absolutely in any region. And we in Turkey, we live, we coexist with Arabs, Kurds, and line by line. And I don't think that Turkey views while and here I just I urge the attendees here to study about Abdullah Öcalan. I do request you that he is a terrorist by in the eyes of Turkey, but he is the founder of the Kurdish Labour Party, and that was internationally recognized or accused as a terrorist party. Thank you. In the name of Allah, I would like to extend my thanks for all the speakers and to Ibn Khaldun Center and the Al Jazeera Studies Center at Qatar University. In fact, if we are here 4 persons and we do not agree on what is the framework that we need, and if each one of us will exploit this conference to promote his special agenda, whether it is personal or state sponsored, I think that we are losing our time, and and it is very easy for us to blame others. So in this context, it is very important to recognize achieving this framework. I think that there is an elite in the Islamic nation from Indonesia to Morocco that read needs and calls for the establishment of this framework, because that voice is not heard, because the political systems and regimes has the power to block those that elite, and may encourage the elite that supports the political regimes. Therefore, the voices that we hear is an echo of the political systems, but not from the echo for the people. We are, as Muslims, regardless of the countries we belong to, we do not have any problems which are. Who says that there is a problem between an India Sunni and a Shiite Muslim? There is nothing like that. I think that the problem lies in the political system. So these are setbacks, and we need to find a solution for them. If we, as scholars, do not agree, this is a great problem, and this is a great disaster, actually. Uh, Thank you. I am Dr. Khalid Lahroub from Northwestern University. I have two questions for Mr. Ramadan from Turkey and my brother from Iran. Uh, Now, in the slide, we have not seen the relation between Turkey and Israel in the regional discussion. And now, is it now in how is it now? How can you describe that now? Is it still there, progressing or freezing? And my other question on the surprise withdrawal of the American forces from North Syria. Is there a bargain between Turkey and the United States? What will Turkey offer the United States in that regard? As for my brother from Iran, the beautiful words and are good, but on the ground, the Arabs and five Arab capitals, and Baghdad is a defense line for the Iranians. So there is a great concern and a great fear in the Arab region. And there is a flipping for question or a reversed question. This kind of fear pushed some of the Gulf countries to open their doors before Israel, and we condemn that. It's not justified by all means. So, if there, maybe if one tenth of the effort to was exerted to establish dialogue between Arabs and Arab nations and other countries, that would be very much useful. Now, and instead of looking for a joint civilization framework, some sometimes differences create problems. In the Gulf region, in the Emirates, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, they are quite very, very similar, more than any other country. But despite all that, there is a great difference, and there is a big dispute now between them. Though we have a joint culture, joint the religion, there are interests, as Dr. Mahmoud said. We have to put these interests on the table and see how these interests serve all. And the formula that must be followed, that it must bring a win-win situation instead of lose-lose situation. I hope that I hope that questions must be precise and straight. Those persons here do not represent their countries or their political system official view. It's a matter of personal opinion, personal impression, or personal analysis. I will take it will take two questions more. My question to Dr. Mahmoud. He mentioned nationalism and identity, and I don't know whether he connected between them or he disconnected between them. I differentiated between them because nationalism is more strong or is stronger. Nationalism, according to the definitions by academics, is establishing a state nation. or a nation state. But the identity, for example, the Kurdish identity or the Kurd identity, but there is no a Kurd country. During the Ottoman Empire, there was an Arab identity, but there was not an Arab nationalism. So sometimes there is a problem in this. If we just discuss the issue of nationalisms and trying to make that similar to the European nationalism, I think that will go in vain. The last question. Please make your question as short as possible so that we give the speakers the time to respond to your questions. Thank you, Liqa Makki from Al Jazeera Studies Center. I have noticed that from the speech by some of the speakers, there's a kind of misunderstanding of the nature of the conflict in the Arab East. It's not a matter of the Gulf or the Middle East or the Mkhon. There are certain problems in the Levant and in the East, not only only by between leaders, but also between peoples. Maybe 1,000 years ago, as much as there is a joint culture and joint communication among peoples, we should not ignore this issue. And I think that conference, a two-day conference, will not solve a problem that is 100 or maybe more than 1,000 years old. Therefore, maybe this is a problem. This is a crisis that we suffer about in the. So the discussion that took between the Turk and Osman, this is a dangerous and deep misunderstanding that will not end today or tomorrow. And maybe the political problems make that more deeper. But there is a civilization problem which has been ignited and maybe increased by political differences. Some of old civilization problems which are old enough and in this now they are emerging on the surface and sometimes between Arabs and Turks. Doctor, very quickly, could you please answer to the questions or comment on the questions that you heard from the floor?
Thank you very much for your valuable question. Please let me add two comments before moving my answers to your questions. First, Kurds in Turkey are not minority and they are equal citizens. And the second, Turkey is not against Kurds. Turkey is only against terrorist organizations and all kind of terrorist organizations. For your questions, what about Turkey and Israel relations? Because of the time restrictions, I cannot explain all my presentations. So before Mavi Marmara crisis, Turkey and Israel relations, because of the militarization and securitization issue, is highly top level. After Mavi Marmara crisis, both countries cut down their diplomatic relations, and after failed military coup attempt in Turkey, Turkey and Israel is seeking to rehabilitate their relations. But there are very important problems for reformulating the relations because of Israel's offensive and aggressive policy towards Palestine. And the second one, what happens, the withdrawal of United States troops northern Syria. Turkey's priority and aims to sweep away all terrorist organization in northern Syria, and Turkey will not allow or let terrorist corridor in northern Syria. Thank you very much.
دكتور تفضل.
Very quickly, I answer to question one. I mentioned about the speech of our brother from Kurdistan. I don't know how to answer this question. Only you should come to Iran and go to Kurdistan whether they want to be separated from Iran or not. All the Kurds in Iran, they announced that they are Iranians. Their language belongs question of our brothers about Hilal Shia or Shia person. You know, brother, it is a propaganda of the West, and unfortunately, Malik Abdullah of Jordan announced it for the first time, and also after that, some mass media in the region tried to publish it and propagate it. You know, we have helping all Muslim brothers. Before Sudan cut its relation with Iran when it joined to
دكتور عبد
Saudi
الرضا.
Arabia, we help,
Thank you.
1 minute please, we help Sudan a lot. It was Sunni brothers. We help Algeria, we help, even we help when they surrendered Qatar, we were the first country we helped Qatar. You know, at the time of Ottoman Empire, at the time of Britain, when they occupied Iraq, Iranian influence in south of Iraq, Karbala, Najaf, most of the people were talking Persian because of the relation,
شكرا.
because of the Atabat, and so on.
شكرا. دك-
You know, Arbain.
دكتور
It
عبد
is not
الرضا.
influence. And Arbain, 20 million march towards Karbala. 4
شك-
million of them Iranians. You know, this is not
شك-
Shia
Thank-
crescent. In Syria, in Lebanon,
دكتور عبد
500
الرضا.
years ago, advisor of the
دكتور
Safavid
عبد الرضا.
were from
Thank you.
Baalbek and
Thank
so
you.
on. You
دكتور
know, we
تفضل.
are helping Palestinians
دكتور عبد الرضا.
and so on.
شكرا.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry.
شكرا أستاذ العزيز.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your advice. When I go to Turkey, absolutely, I respect the Turkish laws. And I'll not speak about Öcalan. Now I'm now here in Qatar, and I know what I am saying. That's why I'm here in Qatar. You know, Abdullah Öcalan, I said earlier, Turkish describe him or brand him as a terrorist. This is something that we know, but we have 80 members in the parliament. They consider Abdullah Öcalan as leader. So I have differences with the ideology of Abdullah Öcalan. But he is a man with as a model, which is against terrorism. He's against the nationalism. It is true that in the Kurdistan there is nationalism trend, but he has a different vision in general. When I speak, when I ask this question, we can speak about the Kurdish quest away from the personalities, away from the other groups. When you brand a movement that is not representing Kurds, this is not realistic. It is not. All the Kurdistan movement or Kurdish movement, they have supporters, and it has influence in the Kurdish people. We have to agree on this issue. The last point, when the peace process started between PKK and Development and Justice Movement Party, this creates openness in Turkey and also contributed to development. So peace process started again, and I think it will contribute to the stability in the Middle East. Thank you so much, Doctor. Thank you. I would like to say that there is a kind of political change. And now here I'm speaking about the identity and nationalism and the civilizational framework. It is not just a framework, it requires civilizational progress. Because now, today, the world is now in the digital economy. Not even a single Arab country can say it is industrial country after the 19th century in Europe. So still, we are still backward. We can be developed using through development and progress some issues that something related to identity or nationalism, and it's moving very fast. We are still moving in our place, stand still. Thank you because you have turned us back to the earlier discussions. We are academics and we have to be to avoid the politics. We as academicians and we have to avoid politics. Thank you so much for you all, and I wish you all the best. And thanking you, and would like to see you once again in another session. Thank you. Thank you all. Now let us move to the last session, and we call Dr. Rashid Al-Naimi, Director of the International Relations, to chair this session, and Dr. Yunus Muhammad Fadil and Qusay Faleh, and Dr. Ahmed Adam, Dr. Nasr al-Din al-Baqi to be here and for their papers related to the Middle East national groups. Dinner will be after this session. The dinner will be served immediately after the end of this session.